I once heard someone say that 90% of what we worry about will never take place. But then it made me think, well, what about the 10% of the things that will come our way? What about the 10% of the economic downturns or the disease or when relationships fall apart? Whatever it might be, what is the 10% that we worry about actually that happens? You know, it's all too real, and it will eventually happen because we live in a fallen, sinful world. And yes, some of the things we worry about, even though 90% of it will never take place, what about the 10% that actually does? That brings difficulty. Now, we're told in the Bible in 1 John chapter 4, verse 18, that there is no fear in love. Instead, perfect love drives out fear. But how exactly does that work? What does this perfect love of God say as it drives out fear of what might be? It's not convincing us that our worries are not valid, because those things that we worry about actually happen at times. But what the Lord says to us is that when it does happen, we can still turn to Him. You see, instead, the perfect love that God offers, when confronted with our anxieties, our worries, and our fears, or all the what ifs, God says, well, what if it does happen? What if your business does fail? What if disease does come? What if the economy does crumble? God's love says, what if it does? Would any of those things separate you and I from the love of God? Would any of those occurrences be bad enough to change our eternal security in Jesus Christ? Would that problem that we are going through actually change the goodness, the love, and the power of God? Well, of course, the answer is no. You see, fear is driven out by the love of God. Not because that 10% will never happen, but because even when it does happen, it does not change the demonstrated love of God, not one bit. Unfortunately, we find ourselves most of the time, instead of looking to God, we look at our problems, and that's the wrong place to misplace our glaze. You see, it only serves to further our building of anxiety in the 10% of problems that will actually happen in our life. So yes, the next time someone tells you that of all the things that you worry and have anxiety over, that 90% of it won't happen, well, you can have confidence in Jesus Christ that even the 10% that does happen, that God is still in control. This is Pastor Ken Smith, thanking you for listening and hoping that this encourages you while you go through this journey of life.